Modern Western philosophy, the philosophy of G.E. Moore. Moore was an analyst and propounded his philosophical ideas in the form of detailed philosophical pieces, theorizing on a unitary theme or an idea. The way of doing philosophy according to Moore is to examine and discuss an idea in exclusion. Exclusion means taking it away from all the other things and avoiding mixing up of one idea with another. In other words, he always treated a single idea and not a bunch of ideas together. He analyzed a single idea from all possible ways, exhausting it from all directions and all possible angles. This process in philosophy is called analysis, and hence we can say that Moore was an analyst. G.E. Moore wrote a number of literary works in the form of essays and articles, but the most important article of his is entitled Refutation of Idealism, which appeared in Mind in London in the year 1903. In all his literary works, he critiques the concept of idealism, or especially Berkeley's philosophy. Refutation of Idealism. Moore rejects idealism. According to idealism, the objects in the external world cannot exist without being perceived. Idealism believes in to be is to be perceived, or esse est percipi. This is also something which belongs to the philosophy of Berkeley. Moore advocated that existence of the objects in the world do not depend in any way upon human perception. Moore attacks idealism and comes up with an effective rebuttal of the proposition to be is to be perceived, or esse est percipi. He does this in his article entitled Refutation of Idealism. Before commencing into Moore's philosophy of how he refutes idealism, it is important to understand the nature of proposition. Fundamentally, there are two types of propositions. Number 1, analytic propositions. Number 2, synthetic propositions. Number 1, analytic propositions. Analytic propositions are necessary and co-implicative propositions. They are also called tautologies because either they are always true or they are always false. It can be said that they can never be sometimes true or sometimes false. It is due to this they are called tautologies. For example, bachelor is an unmarried man. This proposition is analytic in nature because it is always true. Also, the predicate term unmarried man is contained in the subject term bachelor. So, in the case of analytic propositions, the predicate term is contained in the subject term. It is also important to note that analytic propositions give us no new information or knowledge. In other words, they are simply educatory or definitional in nature. They do not refer to any actual state of affairs. Lastly, they are always self-evident in nature. Number 2, synthetic propositions. Synthetic propositions are contingent propositions. They are sometimes true and sometimes false in nature. They are not self-evident, and these propositions cannot guarantee their truth. Also, they refer to actual state of affairs and are hence not definitional in nature. They give us new information or new knowledge. For example, cows are black. Here, the predicate term black is not contained in the subject term cows because it is possible that some cows are also white or brown in color. From this, we can summarize that propositions are of two kinds, analytic and synthetic. Analytic propositions are tautologies. They are self-evident in nature and they are definitional in nature, meaning they give us no new information. On the other hand, synthetic propositions are contingent propositions. They are not self-evident and they give us new information. Now, more hours. Number 1, the analysis of the meaning of the term existence or esse does not entail the idea of perception or percipi. Number 2, a relation is necessary in nature if and only if its opposite cannot be thought of. Number 3, so to be is to be perceived is not a self-evident proposition. Number 4, only analytical propositions are necessary in nature. They are self-evident in nature, but they also do not give us any new information. hence they are sterile. If to be is to be perceived or esse est percipi is taken to be an analytic proposition, then it gives us no new information or knowledge, and it tells us nothing about the state of affairs or experience. If we take it to be synthetic in nature, then it is not self-evident and contingent in nature. Number 5. No proposition can be both analytic and synthetic in nature. This leads to the fundamental principle of contradiction. Number 6. A proposition taken to be both is and is not is wholly unacceptable and is a travesty of facts. Hence, Moore says, idealists commit the mistake of taking two distinct elements as somehow one. This is Moore's refutation of idealism. The defense of common sense philosophy. Moore proves that the idealist argument to be is to be perceived is not self-evident in nature. So, Moore says, for example, when we are in a garden and we see the grass is green and the sky is blue, from this we understand that green and blue are not the two same things. They are different from each other. This distinction between green and blue is not due to awareness or sensation because, Moore says, the visual mechanism followed in the case of seeing the green grass and in the case of seeing the blue sky is the same. So, it is important to note that the distinction between the two is due to the difference being in between the green and the blue objects. Hence, from this we follow that there is a disunion between awareness or sensation and the content of awareness or sensation. In other words, according to Moore, our consciousness has two elements. Number 1, our consciousness gives rise to awareness. Number 2, the content of consciousness differentiates between one awareness from the other. Idealists fail to comprehend and understand these two distinctions. Moore says the consciousness and the content of consciousness are two separate things. For example, Moore says, when we see the color blue, blue does not belong to our consciousness but to the object sky. Similarly, when we see a red flower, our consciousness does not turn red in color because the flower is red in color and we cannot say our consciousness is red in color. Hence, Moore is best known for putting the emphasis on the common sense philosophy. His philosophy primarily aims to say that consciousness and the content of consciousness are two separate things.